Welcome to another Leadership Lessons AMA. My name is Alex, and I am the Growth Marketing Lead at OfferZen, and I'll be hosting today's session. Before we dive into the event, as always, we have a few rules of engagement. The chat is open, so please take a moment to say hi, maybe drop where you're joining from. You can tell I'm not in the heat of South Africa at the moment. I'm in Amsterdam in the cold. If you have any questions, please make sure to drop them in the questions tab at any time throughout the day. We'll make sure to cover them at the end of the session. And yes, we are recording, so you will get the replay link post-event if there's any nuggets of wisdom that you'd like to relook at. And it's great to see that the chat is working. A lot of people joining from Cape Town and the heat. So sorry, I hope you're surviving. Okay, so tech leadership can be high stakes, invisible, and sometimes lonely. Our engineering leadership report shows that 1 in 3 tech leaders feel isolated, and many feel pressure to prove their team's value rather than to lead. Our AMAs celebrate leadership as a craft. This is your hour to hear how others navigate challenges, reflect on career-defining moments, and ask your own burning questions live. Today, we're joined by Leandro Fernandez, an engineering manager at Meta, who spent the last 16 years building and leading software and machine learning teams at some of the world's biggest tech companies, including Uber and Meta. Let's get Leandro on stage. Give him a few seconds. There
Hi,
he
Alex.
is. Hi, how's it going?
It's all good. All good.
Good. Before we dive into the session, do you want to just tell us a little bit about yourself and your journey?
Yeah, absolutely. So, well, my name is Leandro. I'm from Brazil. I'm an engineering manager for the past 5 years, and before then, for about 12 years, developer. I worked mostly in big companies, some more traditional, some more like big tech, Silicon Valley style. That's what I've been doing for the past 7 years, I guess. I'm currently working at Meta in London. Before that, I worked for Uber in Brazil. I was one of the first engineers in the uh, tech site that they have there. So I helped it grow from a handful of people to, I guess when I left, we had about 200 folks, and now it's past 500. Before then, I worked at Dell. I'm a computer science I have a computer science degree. Funnily enough, I also have a law degree, which I never practically used as well. But I have that. So if you need legal advice, I don't suggest you contact me. I'm not the right person to do it. But it's something that stays on my resume. Yeah, in a very high level, I guess that's my journey. Yeah.
Amazing. I'm excited to dive into your story a little bit more in the session. And also just shout out to you for joining, because just for the audience, Leandro is originally based in the UK, which would only be an hour or two behind SA, but he was pulled to San Fran for a work meeting, I think, or a work event. So it's 3 o'clock in the morning for him. But we are very appreciative that you're joining the session today. And then just for the audience to just run through what we're going to be unpacking. So firstly, theme 1 is around your journey to becoming a leader, the mess ups and the milestones that you experienced along the way, building and leading for the future, and then adopting AI coding tools while managing technical debt, which I think is going to be quite a meaty topic alone for us to dive into. Plus, audience, a lot of questions or a lot of time for your questions at the end. And we will be giving away some OfferZen swag for those that engage. So please make sure to drop your questions and banter in the chat. Okay, now that admin's done, I'm keen to dive into the actual meat of the session. Theme number 1, the journey to leader. Let's start at the beginning. Can you share a moment or a decision that really shifted your career path and pushed you towards leadership?
Yeah, absolutely. So I have to say first is I, I see as two different things being a leader and the role that I play now as a manager, right? I think particularly in tech, what you see a lot is that there's not this like clear distinction between you're a manager and a leader, or you're not a manager and not a leader, right? As a matter of fact, I think some of the best engineers and some of the best leaders that I saw, they were playing individual contributors roles, and they can be extremely effective at that. With that said, I don't think like my past specifically had a very shifting moment. If you think about leadership itself, I always, since I started developing software in started my career, I seem to have an impulse to kind of like owning more and more responsibilities. This sort of stuff that just excites me. I like being useful. It's one of my toxic personality traits, I guess. Um, and so, like, I think things naturally converge to that. On the other hand, I think from being an IC to becoming a manager, that's a different story, right? Like that's something that I've always sort of have this internal debate myself. Like, look, should I do that? Should I not? Um, and you get very different career perspectives when you are in a more traditional company versus when you are in like more modern or more
Yeah.
like kind of Silicon Valley style ones. I think like in the Silicon Valley you get a lot of like what they call the Y career path, like which at certain point you can kind of choose to become a manager, continue in the technical path, but that doesn't hinder your growth, right? And I think that's a super cool feature of how these companies work. And so when I got in contact with that, and I saw that management was not seen as like a necessary step to growth, right? Which I saw a lot in traditional companies. So you seem to notice a lot of unhappy managers. People that in like they had a good intention of like, look, I want to continue growing,
Mm.
but I don't see necessarily myself as being a manager, but I have to do it if I want to grow. So it wasn't a very inspiring scene for me. When I shifted to big tech and I got in contact with that throughout my career, I saw that being like a very different story. And then I started seeing myself doing that, right? Like I was like, look, I think my skills and like what really differentiates me from other people are much more in dealing with other people and helping others than like solving like really nasty technical problems on my own, which is a
Mm.
very simplistic way of differentiating the two careers. But I think that was like the shifting moment to me when I realized that, and then I kind of decided, yeah, this is the path I want to take.
Mm. I mean, many engineers kind of hesitate to step into that leadership or managerial space because they fear losing that technical edge or their credibility. What do you recommend people do to kind of maintain your technical edge while expanding your influence across a business?
Yeah, the fear is real, I have to say. I think if like with all the managers that I have like that I speak with, that I have enough confidence to actually talk about the sensitive topics. I think they all feel that to a certain extent. So it's like it's a common thing. Um, but I see as it kind of breaks down into two things, right? On the one hand, um, there is this concern about managers you don't have time to look at code anymore, right?
Mm.
And it varies a lot, and like company by company, role by role, there's different styles of managers. You see in some companies you have what they call like these TLMs, technical lead managers, and which is someone that plays kind of a hybrid role between an IC looking at the code and managing a small team of people. It's not my case. And look, I think it's very hard to keep up with the code.
Yeah.
You usually don't have time. You don't want to put yourself into the critical path of the team by taking coding tasks, and usually are like having to solve all sorts of things that are more important. The way that I try to solve this is, which I think is far from ideal. By the way, I try to compensate that by doing coding interviews. Um, so I try to get like at least a couple a week, like that last like an hour. So that really helps me making sure that I still get to see some code, but
Mm.
it's not code that like I necessarily need to be into the weeds of the system that I'm doing, like and like having super big context on what's happening, the latest changes, the latest diffs and PRs and etc. Like picking up new coding questions help me kind of like I need to I need to solve it myself
Yeah.
before I apply to someone else. Like I know common pitfalls and see where candidates will take the question. So that's kind of like a way of putting myself still in contact with the code.
Mm.
I think with AI lately as well, code, like the importance of code is shifting dramatically and very fast. So I don't know if this is like a massive concern. It's going to be a massive concern anymore. I don't know. And it's also the entry barrier for people to write code on an existing code base that they don't know. It's super low, right? You can just talk to an AI agent and they'll do a lot of stuff and even help you understand the code for you. Now, the second part of not keeping very up technically, I think it's on a higher level of abstraction, right? You're understanding systems, how they relate to each other, how they solve business problems. I think that's an unavoidable um, understanding and an unavoidable thing for managers, and like particularly good managers in companies that value technical expertise. So I think managers should challenge themselves to be able to reason about the systems in which they operate, explain it to others, particularly to be able to ask meaningful questions, right? You don't need to be the person that knows it the most in your team. You can rely on your tech leads, but you need to ask meaningful questions, particularly from the point of view of like the business, right?
Mm.
Understand what trade-offs are being made. And so the style of management that I really enjoy doing kind of requires you to do that. So it comes naturally. And I don't think I would like to be put in a position where that is not relevant anymore. Although I know there are like managers that are super focused on people, not so much technically, but it's not really that much my style.
So to summarize, it's at a high level as a leader, keep that zoom out, have that understanding that you can challenge the way people think. But in terms of getting into the weeds, try and find ways to work it into your business as usual tasks as a manager, which involves, for example, hiring and doing the coding tests.
Yeah.
Yeah, I love that. I think it's a very practical way to keep that balance in the coding side of things, but also still keeping a pulse in the way you need to think in order to engage with code. You briefly touched on it in the previous question, but I just want to unpack it a little bit more. Do you think that the journey from developer to leader looks different in big tech compared to scale ups? I mean, you mentioned your journey overall and your leadership journey at Uber. How did that environment really shape you early on?
Yeah. So I do think it's different. I've never really been into scale ups to see in person, but my I can share my perception, like how I think things are, and I understand the how management works in very big companies, right? So to start with, I think in big companies, manager have a very well-defined role, right? What you are expected to do, what you're expected not to, what you're not expected to do, right? Typically, for example, manager is not expected to write code in big companies,
Mm.
whereas in scale ups, what I see is that you just have to do everything that's needed at the moment, and so you kind of have to put on different hats at different times. So it seems like a much more dynamic environment. You don't really have the opportunity, the ability to expect exactly what you're going to do, which is a very different thing. um, Managers, I think also in big companies have a lot of support, be it by the company, by HR, by other managers, or by even by the processes defined by the company itself, right? You typically have in these companies like a very standardized and well-defined set of management framework that you can work with, right?
Mm.
So you have performance cycles where things are happening in a certain way, and people get evaluated and with known criteria, and promotions follow like very dogmatic procedures that managers are expected to handle them like wizards in the like mixing a potion. And again, whereas in scale ups, I think you have to figure out all those things along the way, and you may not get all the structure, all of that support, and you just have to make things work.
Really kind of creating as you're going versus there's a lot of documentation already existing. Very
Yeah.
true. Awesome. I'm keen to move on to the next theme, talking about the messy moments and the milestones, really mistakes, lessons, and pivotal experiences that have really shaped your leadership style. Early in your leadership journey, was there a mindset or maybe a habit early on that limited your effectiveness as a leader? How did you adapt as your responsibilities grew?
Yeah. So this is something I think about in my shift to management, right? So what happened in my shift to management is that I was sort of like a technical person in a team, and I was offered the shift to becoming the manager of that team. The biggest challenge for me was um, within the same environment with the same people, understanding what were the different expectations from a technical person to a manager. For example, um, I could not, as a manager, put myself in a position where I was in a critical path of the team, right? But I still felt quite compelled to do that. First, I started with a small team, so I think management didn't take up fully my time. So I felt like, hey, I still have some spare time to do some coding, which I think it's not necessarily bad if you're taking things that can perhaps delay. If like typical management activity comes into becoming a bigger priority, but also this urge to be involved in technical decisions while you still have a technical person. So I think it's easy for managers to kind of hinder the ability of other technical people if you're still there calling the shots technically, like you want to review all of the code and etc. So that was hard. What solved things for me was that naturally I ended up shifting to a different team, which had a domain that I wasn't familiar with, a code base that I wasn't familiar with, and perhaps even more importantly for me to see the stark contrast is that it was a team mainly focused on a tech stack that I was not familiar. So it was mostly mobile development, right? And I knew very little about it. Um, it was very scary for me because like I felt I wasn't in full control of things, right? Like that if it was required from me to do what the folks on my team were doing, I was not going to be able to do it that day. Like I would probably have like a big learning curve, and that scared me a lot. On the other hand, it also kind of taught me what is the appropriate level for a manager to operate, how to rely on other people, and feel comfortable with that discomfort. So yeah, that's I guess how I dealt with it.
I love that. It's a great comparison. Can you share a project or decision that maybe didn't go as planned? How did you and your team recover, and what leadership lesson did you take from it?
Yeah. So I guess one situation where this happened is and I used to see that a lot in the early days of my career, is that you have these big projects that have been decided, and you need to do that, and it's the objective of the project is about rewriting part of our infrastructure, right? And you are given many reasons for doing that. Oh, like our code is not in a good shape. We are slow. We cannot easily integrate to new use cases and etc. So in other words, it's typically projects that have a typical a goal associated with the quality of your engineering infrastructure, but not necessarily tied to a business goal, right? We were not trying to improve a metric to, solve a problem for the business, but rather solving an engineering problem. And we spend a lot of time, our team, developing that project and putting it forward. And I was at the time in a company where all of these big projects, you had to actually prepare a design document and present it into sort of like a board to say, look, this is how we're going to do things. Like, is everyone okay? And the board was consisted of like senior engineers and other senior managers. And after spending like, I don't know, a few months in working on this project, like presuming this design would be approved,
Yeah.
we went on to present it, and we got like a very big pushback on the director. And it was not on the design itself, but this director, one of the leaders that I really look up into since down until today,
Mm,
she just said like, look, I'm not bought into why are we doing this project that's going to take months and months. And
mm,
the justification, it was hard to explain, right? Like this is something that was kind of like always bugged me at the time, but it resembled something like, hey, we support these three use cases with the current architecture, and if we wanted to support these other, which we might in the future, but it's not super clear, our code would not handle that like super well. We would be slow. So we were kind of trying to anticipate a future which was uncertain, with benefits that were not easily measurable. Like we said we would be slow, but it was unclear how much slower, if it was worth it or not. Like we didn't even did an attempt to measure the trade-off.
mm.
And ultimately she just like pushed back and said, look, I'm not convinced. If you guys want to keep going with this project, I'm going to need to see more signals of like why, or what's the benefit of this. And that was a big bummer, obviously, but I think I also learned very important lessons on that situation. The first one, which I take very seriously today, is to be aware of early optimizations, right? Instead of trying to predict problems that are going to happen if X, Y, and Z happen, try to solve for things that are concrete, or like are, one block away from where you are, and not like trying to predict problems that may happen 1 or 2 years ahead, because the future is so uncertain. You never know when things are going to come. And by the way, dropping the project, I think looking back, was the right decision. The situation has never came. The second thing that I became super aware is, just be conscious of work that you cannot really justify. So like, right, really trying to understand the justification behind the projects that you're doing. I think it's very easy, particularly for engineers that like to solve technical problems, to not be aware of busy work, right? When you are given like this super complicated technical task that creates this sense of like, hey, I'm solving this amazing technical problem, but you can't really tie to important benefits to the business, right?
Mm.
And if that cannot be clearly articulated, it's a big smell. Like, you need to really question if that's worth being done.
No, I think there's some really great learnings and lessons there that we can share or that the audience can take away. I know imposter syndrome is always also a scary topic, especially as people move into leadership. Was that true for you? And what changed over time in how you dealt with it?
Yeah, it is true. It has been, and always has been. I think for me and for a lot of people, it's sort of like a personality trait. And particularly as you start
Yeah.
becoming more successful in your career, it just tends to kick in more, because I think the imposter syndrome just like questions the success. So I would say in the early days of my career, yeah, maybe it was there a little bit. But as I started getting more and more responsibilities, shifting to managing more people, like I think it only became more intense,
Yeah.
which in some ways, like, it doesn't make sense, because it seems like the external world is validating you by like offering you new opportunities, like recognizing that, and internally it seems you're interpreting that as like worse signals. It's like, okay, now it's more, um, what am I doing here? The things keep happening. So I fully recognize that about myself, and I think it's the same for a lot of people.
Mm.
So the way I deal with it, the first of all, is acknowledging that about yourself and try to identify its patterns. I think it's a super powerful tool is being aware of your psychological mechanisms, um, not just about imposter syndrome, but in general, right? Like being self-aware is super important. Like we as human beings are so much driven by unconscious feelings, by unconscious processes that if we
Mm.
let them loose, it's gonna be super hard to prevent them from doing damage in our lives.
Yeah.
Um, so being aware, I think it's super important. Embrace that you will feel awkward at times, and what I try to do is try to remind myself of sticking to the objective reality as much as possible. Right,
Mm.
seeing external signals. If people outside you are seeing yourself as different than you are, I think this is a very clear signal, right? I don't think you can fool everyone every time, all the time, if things are happening to you, if your opportunities are given, particularly with people that have seen you for some time, stick to that objective truth and try to remind yourself of that, rather than falling in this trap of like, hey, I can fool everyone. And if you could really do that, like that's probably a signal of tremendous competence in some way anyway.
I think that's great advice again. I'm keen to shift on to theme number three,
Mhm.
building and leading for the future, how you create teams that thrive, grow, and really just navigate change successfully. Do you have a leadership North Star? And can you share a time where it guided a tough decision?
Yeah. So I think above all, um, I value some leadership traits in people.
Mm.
One one leader that really inspired me a lot was Uber CEO at the time when I worked there, Dara. And I think because he has a lot of the characteristics that I really really value as a leader. So first of all, I think I value empathy and cool-headedness a lot,
Yeah.
like the ability of a leader to perceive human life in all of its complexity. Um, so I think breaking this down a little bit, I think it matters a lot to me, like the demeanor of a leader, right? How they behave in stressful situations, how they communicate that to people. I don't think it's about being naive,
Mm.
but being able to recognize, even though you may be in an extremely complicated situation with your business and etc. Kind of like just trying to maintain your cool headedness and focusing on solving the problem and transmitting that energy to people, right? I think that just helps a lot people around you perceiving like okay, we have problems, life is hard, it is for everyone in every single position in the world, and it doesn't help us if we treat this in a stressful or in an aggressive way. So I value that a lot. I also, this is kind of something I learned from one of my leaders at Meta. He was one of my managers. He's not in the company anymore, but someone that I really looked up to. And I think I always kind of like seem to be inspired about leaders that were very kind, empathic, and etc. um, which in some senses, if you focus only on that, it's always like, okay, but this is, we're talking about a business. Businesses are subject to like fierce competition. We're in a competitive world. You're not going to get very far if you only focus about the care and the human aspects of it. You also need to drive success. So this leader, I think he taught me a lot about how to balance these demeanor, this cool-headedness, this empathy, with setting the right level of rigor and urgency to the people that you are leading, and doing that in a way where you kind of ask people to sign up to a challenge rather than imposing them a situation that they don't want to be imposed. Um, I I I got a lot of inspiration of like trying to set the level of rigor. If you're working with people that really value their careers, that they want to be useful, that they want to solve complicated problems, what I've noticed is that people appreciate uh, a level of rigor and a level of like being challenged to go the extra mile. So I think balancing out these two sides of the coin, it's
Mm.
extremely powerful to take the best out of people while still keeping them, their humane side
Yeah.
minimally well taken care of.
Yeah, because at the end of the day, we're working with humans. So that is an important thing to balance.
I mean, you need to feel good about the place that you're working and the people that you're working with. I think that's like a non-negotiable thing to me, and I think leaders in many aspects they shape that. So yeah.
And I think that's a nice segue into rapid change and when things are uncertain. Can you share an example of how you've helped a team navigate that and how your North Star has really showed up in those environments?
Yeah. Well, I think um, we are going into a process of like very rapid change at the moment with AI.
Yeah.
Um, I think what I try to do first is to acknowledge the situation, right? Being very transparent about the things that I know, and most importantly, the things that I don't know. I think that my leadership style is to not prevent the uncertainty of and the complexity of the situations to my team, while still trying not to freak people out, right? So I think that there's a level of, right, you don't want to you want to share the information in a way that doesn't just create pure chaos, but you also recognize, look, we're going to a change, like nobody really understand where things are going, and we're just going to have to figure that out together. I think this last bit, like we're gonna figure that out together, is super important. Like to position yourself as like, look, I'm subject to the same change. I'm subject to the same shifting environment, and I also don't know how to deal with that. But I will be there, and learning and perhaps making mistakes alongside you, and we're gonna figure that out, right? And I think the reassurance part is super important as well. Just like, look, reassure to people that change is part of the world we live in, and we are all those of us that are working together. We've demonstrated for in many ways that we're competent to do the things that we are doing, and like I'm fairly certain that we can navigate these changes and be meaningfully successful in where we need to be when this kind of cools down.
I love that approach. And I think it's a really good segue to our fourth theme around AI, speaking about current changes. AI in development. We want to speak about adopting AI coding tools while managing tech debt. So, really focusing on how to adopt AI coding tools effectively while keeping your technical debt under control. So, in your opinion, when teams start using AI coding tools, sorry, my language, AI coding tools, what early signs tell that you're genuinely improving productivity versus quietly adding technical debt?
Yeah. Well, so I think what I try to think about that is technical debt is a problem that existed before AI. So I think AI can potentially, in some ways, accelerate that, and we may need to deal with it differently in the future. But ultimately, what I think is a team needs to have a way of understanding what is the technical debt that they're dealing with. I think technical debt is notoriously hard to measure. Like I've never seen a good way for teams to look at it at a specific code base and extract a metric that says our tech debt measurement is X and Y, and it's good and it's back and it's bad. So in that sense, well, like what I think it's a good approach in general, right? Not just with AI, but I think it's applicable as well. Teams to me need a structure of continuous self-improvement, like processes that they are where they are continuously finding problems and things slowing them down, and that you're constantly fixing them, but also causing you to reflect on why these problems are happening in the first place, like trying to look at systematic gaps in how we operate that just are enabling problems to arise. So you may come up with the conclusion that we are being careless about accepting code, that that the speed of AI is just too big and you need to put on some guardrails. If you have these processes that make you reflect, I think it's a pretty good start to understand like what is AI causing to our code base. And there are many signals that you can extract from the day-to-day operations of a technical team. What I have to say is that I think it's super important that this process is instituted in a blameless way, right? You're creating this not to try to find the guilty individuals when problems arise, but you're trying to improve the team. So in a sense, I think people that raise problems, and they need to be celebrated. The problems need to be celebrated in a way because they are information, very valuable information about things that are not going well, and that can be fixed. So I think, in summary, I'd say try to measure in some way how much time teams are spending in tasks, in work that are directly creating business value versus when they are just doing other stuff. Like ultimately I see like tech teams should see themselves as like, look, our job is to provide business value, and whatever business value is in the context where they are, you can institute there are many different ways. Like the most obvious, like we're like improving revenue for the company, but that is definitely not the only way. But when teams are working on tasks that are like, hey, I need to refactor this code, I need to fix this bug, I need to create this new alert, or this new monitoring, none of those things directly matter to the business, right? They only matter indirectly in the sense that if you get a robust system, the business will will work better. But when you do that directly, you're not moving a business metric. So I think finding a way of measuring the time spent, even though it's super high level, in the one set of tasks versus the other, it's kind of going to give you a good sense of like how much time we're just cleaning up stuff versus how much time can we really spend time in improving our business. And that can kind of give you a sense of like, hey, we're going on a good direction, a bad direction. Do we need to slow down? Do we need to speed up? Do we need to figure out other thing? Do we need to figure out how to prevent this tech debt to creep in?
Yeah, I mean, I've got an interesting stat. According to JetBrains Developer Ecosystem Survey, over half of developers spend 1 to 5 working days per month dealing with technical debt. In your experience, how have AI coding tools changed this reality? Are they helping teams pay down this debt, or are they shifting where and how it actually shows up?
Yeah, it's super hard to say because I think need to acknowledge that the situation of AI coding tools 6 months ago compared to now is like a very different world. So I think we're all learning and things are changing super fast. I don't know what's going to happen if tech debt is going to increase, is going to lower. What I've seen is that the way AI coding tools happen today, I think that they allow us to solve very big problems so much easier than in the past. So I've actually seen developers rewriting frameworks from scratch in like less than a week, just using AI. So I think it's opening up like these super crazy opportunities to solve tech debt. I'm sure that in some senses, a lot more code is being generated. Code reviews are the bottleneck, and they still are. Like, we can automate some stuff, but if for a lot of things, I think people still feel like they need a human being to review code, and obviously that's going to be a bottleneck.
Mm.
So I don't have a good sense of like it's making things good or making things bad, but I can tell you that on the one hand, it speed up code which has problems if you're writing too much code and people not paying attention to it. On the other, um, you have these incredible powerful tools that you can just like, look, if this framework that has been like the basis of our infrastructure for the last 10 years, and we know have like many shortcomings, but we never find ourselves having the time or energy to fix those, like maybe today it's a much more viable path to just let's start from scratch.
What practices, guardrails, or review processes have you seen work well to ensure AI assisted code meets quality standards?
um yeah, so I'll go back to code reviews, right? I think um we're not in a world yet where we feel confident um, automating fully the process of writing code, right? For many, in many cases, we still require humans to stay in the loop. And it's not just about coding. I think AI in general, like companies like want to use more and more, but they still feel that for many tasks we still need a human to review it because we don't trust fully
Mm.
in the AI's ability to not hallucinate and not create nasty things. I think that that might be the reality for a while. So I think doubling down on code reviews
Mm.
is super important. Um, Particularly, I would say you need to be able to distinguish critical parts of your system versus not so much, right? And you can institute very different guardrails in these critical parts. For example, I've seen companies uh, setting a restricted group of only a restricted group of people can approve diffs into certain paths of the code base because we know we're dealing with like code that is super sensitive, super critical, and etc.
Mm.
But also try to keep it a little lighter in other areas, like maybe anyone can approve a diff, and see if kind of like try to maybe automate or parts of code reviews gradually and see how that works. Um, I know that there are some AI tools that can do a lot of good code review work. Uh, I still feel like it's people still need to feel confident that there's a human being review. So maybe what we're starting to see is code review reviewers as humans, um, but yeah, it so I would say for now, I
Yeah.
think we still really need to double down on this human review part.
No, that makes sense. Maybe ending off this theme before we dive into audience questions, because I see we've got a lot of audience questions. If you could give one piece of advice to teams adopting AI coding tools today to really avoid accumulating that tech debt, what would it be?
Yeah. So this is like a really interesting thing that I've been thinking about recently. With the way things are going today, like in some companies, we are seeing over 90% of the code that's being produced is produced by AI. So what I take from that is that the the actors, the main actors on your code base, they stop being humans and they start becoming AI, right? So I think we need to consider shifting our mindset of designing systems that are meant for humans to work on them, and rather designing systems that are meant for AIs to navigate on them. So I'll give you an example. I always cared a lot for readability of code when I was writing code, right? It was very important to me to reduce the cognitive load on people that had to work on my code base, right? You have these open source model in companies where anyone, particularly in big tech, where anyone can change code in any part of the code base. So you have essentially like a gigantic code base. Nobody's is fully aware of everything. So one of the biggest piece of tech that is, if it just took too much for a human being to understand what a piece of code were doing when they got in contact with it in the first place, to be able to do something useful with it, right? Now with AI, the situation is quite different. AIs can handle like an immense amount of context, and they they thrive on context, and they take context in a different way than human beings, right? So human beings have this, uh, at least myself, I need to have like a high level mental model of the code that I'm working with, that can kind of fit into my conscious brain at a single time, right? So I need like a high level overview. But AIs can actually handle like a pretty big pieces of content for information at the same time. So they might not need that. They don't have the concept of mental model. So what I'm trying to say is, try to think of ways that you can improve AI's ability to navigate and reason in your code. I'm seeing like one manifestation of this principle is, for example, leaving in the code base a lot of markdown files that explain like the architecture of the system that can be consumed by AI. When I've seen teams applying that successfully, like it improves the quality of the AI code dramatically. But I think that's just like a small example that we are seeing today. I think the biggest advice that I will give is for teams to think about and experiment what are the things that you need to do in a code base to make it more AI friendly, and kind of embrace that. I think code is going to be probably going to be something that is dealt much more with AIs than with human beings directly in the future.
Mic drop. I think that's great advice. And there's actually quite a lot of AI oriented questions in the questions tab. So I'm keen to maybe keep that trend going for a little bit. So let's jump into audience questions. I'm going to pull them onto the screen so you can also read them, Leandro. But how should developers navigate AI adoption when CEOs selling AI tools constantly claim engineers will soon be obsolete? AI is exciting, but the doom mongering makes pragmatic adoption feel like a double-edged sword.
Yeah. Well, I think it's a very valid concern, and I have full empathy about that. So I'll start with that. It's a very rapidly changing world that we are now, particularly for our profession. For the good or for the bad, AI can write code very well, and I think it's just going to be um, unavoidable that we're going to rely more and more about that. On the other hand, what I will say is I think I'd invite people that are concerned to see the moment that we are now as an opportunity. I think that, like many other revolutions in business in the past, when these revolutions came to be, people that really embraced them and tried to make the best of it had like such a tremendous opportunity for growth and for doing more, that I think it's worth uh, trying to navigate and surf the wave rather than just opposing. I don't particularly think that our profession will become irrelevant, like by far. So if people are like, look, I'm just not bought into it yet, etc. I think with all likelihood, we're all still going to have jobs to do. Maybe it's going to be something else.
Mm.
But what I would say is, if you want to take this as an opportunity and say, look, I'm just going to try my best and see what tools are are out there, what tools actually do good things and help me out, and you kind of show to people around you that you are, one of the persons trying to make the best out of it. I think there's a tremendous opportunity lying around.
It's a great perspective to share. How do you introduce AI tools to more experienced developers who are already comfortable with their current workflows and frame it in a way that feels empowering rather than disruptive, especially if they are really stubborn and not open to change?
Yeah. it is hard. I don't think that there's like a magic formula. I think some people are just like naturally skeptical about things. Um, there are a few ways that I can think of. So I think demoing like how things can be done much easier is a powerful tool, right? Like just showing them like how you would do certain things in a traditional way, and then look, this is how can be done with AI, and how easier and quicker it is. Maybe it's a way of show like trying to convince people. I think we should frame this as like, look, these are tools that are meant to just make our lives easier, to take out like the burden of like a very some very tedious parts of our job in making them faster. And I think there's nothing better than hands-on, right? If people are not willing to try it by themselves, you can obviously not force them, right? Show it to them, like, hey, like maybe do it like a session of pair programming, someone who's really already familiar with the AI tools, and say like, look, let's do like a task that we would do traditionally. Let me show you how I navigate this, and we'll see the differences, and maybe you extract some learnings out of it. And also invite them to say like, look, it may be that there are, you're still doing like really good things as a developer, but you know just getting yourself exposed to like what the tools are there can do. It's just like a another way of perhaps reassuring that you can still do things the other way. It's meant to bring you more information rather to force you in a certain way. uh yeah, I guess that's how I try to approach it.
Yeah, and maybe just to add how we've been doing it at Office Zen is I think it's just creating the visibility for everyone within the business. So we've got like an AI channel where people are dropping all the relevant tools or new topics and articles that are coming out. But we've also got a help with AI channel. So it's like if someone is wanting or has a problem and doesn't know how to solve for it, like you can get a buddy to rub a duck with and figure it out. So yeah, I think just creating that transparency and keeping the conversation going also helps a lot because it's coming to top of mind all the time.
Yeah, that's a really good idea.
Cool. Matt asks, how do you think the role of engineering managers or heads of engineering will be different 1 year from now? What do you think the most successful companies will be doing differently?
Wow. It's a very hard question to ask. Like I don't know anyone can meaningfully try to predict the future, but I'll do my best. Um, I think 1 year from now, if things continue changing with the speed that they are today, um, it's gonna be like a almost unrecognizable world for software engineers and for managers. Um, what I've seen some companies um, shifting towards, sort of in their structure, is having smaller teams with more experienced people and a manager that is much more hands-on. So on the one hand, um, I think with AI, the barrier for managers to remain technically active is much lower. It becomes much easier because like it reduces a lot of like the ramping up on a new code base on a new technology, right? So I think one possibility is that you will see like managers like blending in like a technical role a lot more than you are today. I've seen other companies that are going like full speed, full head down into like this notion of, you know, even management itself can be replaced by AI,
Mm,
which kind of brings it to like a very different a team structure. So you would see like, a manager with dozens and dozens of direct reports, and the real big parts of the relationship being handled by AI tools itself.
sure.
I think it seems so different. I don't know what to make of it. Maybe it works, maybe it won't. I still feel that a lot of the value that managers bring to the table have to do with the human contact,
Mm,
and in that sense, you can scale human beings only so much. So I know maybe it can work, maybe it doesn't. It's very hard to say. I think it's good for us to see companies trying a bunch of different things out and see what really works and what doesn't. So I think we're looking at a year of a lot of learnings, and a lot of different experiments in the industry. If the speed of change in AI diminishes by then, which I have no idea of what's going to happen, but if it diminishes and we can kind of like lend in a more stable way, what I expect is for 1 year from now, we feel much more comfortable in understanding the impacts of all of these change. I think that what I see is in the past 6 months, it's been like the fastest I've seen anything change
Mhm.
on my career, and I would argue is perhaps the biggest change in our industry since the beginning of its day.
Yeah.
So I think it's natural to feel a little like I don't know what's going to happen.
Yeah. It sparks an idea. Maybe we should ask our community to drop their predictions and then we revisit it in a year and kind of see, okay, how far off the mark or on the mark were we?
Yeah.
Um, I'm aware of time, but I want to bring in one or two more questions if we can. Maybe this is more of like a quick fire highlight version, but can you highlight some of your best tips for managing teams with AI in the mix? I know the example that they've shared is very much about reviewing the code, but is there anything outside of that that you want to share?
So I think the moment that we are today, you need to create space for your team to try AI tools and get their hands dirty. So I think we are still in a position where not every developer is like super familiar. Some of them are early adopters and maybe they're seeing a lot of benefit. Some may be skeptical. Some are like more experienced developers that have been doing things in a certain way. But I think it's our jobs as managers to give our team the best opportunity to
Yeah.
navigate this time of change. So what I'll say is top of mind, create the space for your team to try it out. It's very easy to see ourselves into like the pressure of day to day with like deadlines and projects and etc. Um, and not set some time aside for try AI. I don't think this is just like AI. It's just like a new like a new tool that it's around. Like I think it can be like a dramatic shift in our careers. So I think it's super important to be part of it, to try it out and see how it works. Um, and just create that space. Maybe like try to institute like look, today is going to be an AI day for everyone. Nobody's expected to do any project work, and I just want us to try
Mhm.
these AI tools. Like maybe organize some demos, some projects, and create the space for people to try out. Because like for so that projects don't kill the like what may be already like a hard incentive for some people to use a different tool where they are reluctant.
I think that's a great highlight. Okay, last question. Try and squeeze this one in. How do you think AI will change the balance of power between product, engineering, and business over the next 5 to 10 years?
Yeah, it's a good question. Look, I think I don't know if I like to see I like to use the term power because it feels like a competitive scenario. I do see like in different companies, different roles have different levels of protagonism, right? And I see that like so in some companies you people actually refer to them, well, like this is a product company, this is an engineering company, this is like a business or whatever, right? And I think that there is some truth to that, in that some roles have bigger protagonism for whatever our cultural historical reasons around that. Um, I think that that's going to continue to be the case. I don't know if AI is going to shift that particularly, but what I'll say is that if the concern here is, hey, are engineers losing their protagonism or their importance related to other roles, given AI sort of democratizes writing code? I don't think that's the case, because I think it's a very simplistic um, way of like extrapolating the role of engineers as like we're responsible for writing code. Like, and I think it's much more than that. And a lot of the work that is super critical that engineers do, it's not about writing code. Like making technical decisions, making sure that our systems are running well, and all of that. I don't see AI being close to being good at that at this point. Like we're seeing the biggest impact of AI in other areas, right? Which just speed things up. So in that sense, I don't think personally, this is like purely my personal view. I don't know if that's gonna shift dramatically, to be honest.
Amazing. Well, I know we're at time, so that's a wrap for today's Q&A. Leandro, thank you for all your amazing insights, from AI to leadership to all the lessons. I'm sure the audience learned a lot from you. And yes, a reminder to the audience, we did record the session, so we will share it with you via email after the event if you want to revisit some of the nuggets. We do have a few more sessions coming up, so if anyone wants to join any of the upcoming ones, you can vote on the screen now. Again, Leandro, thank you for sharing your reflections, and thank you to our audience for joining the session. I know some of you are waiting with bated breath to hear who the swag winner is. Sasha Wharton, you'll be winning the swag today. I'll be in contact via email after this to get your details. And yeah, just thank you everyone for engaging. Leandro, again, thank you for all your insights, and we'll hope to see you all at the next AMA.
Thank you, Alex. It's been a pleasure. Bye.